Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. My name is Elijah Evans, and I'm joined today by my co-host Dylan Barnas. Super excited to be back today to talk some White Sox baseball with Dylan. We're a week into the season, a little less than a week into the season, I guess. 6 days into the season here. There's been some good things, been some bad things, of course, but we've gotten to watch the White Sox in addition to the AAA Charlotte Knights so far. Both teams have a handful of games under their belt at this point. White Sox still playing tonight. Knights are playing tonight as well. As we record here on Wednesday the 2nd. A lot going on, a lot to discuss today. We've got a kind of mixed schedule going on here. So today we've got the Future Sox Showdown going on today between the Kannapolis Cannonballers and the Winston-Salem Dash. Pretty cool to see the high A and single A lineups of the White Sox, matched up against each other. That's going on today. That is going to be, a cool thing to get to talk about a little bit later on. Tomorrow, I'm going to be, I believe Jeff and I are going to be recording with Dan Haloti of the Kannapolis Cannonballers. So we're going to do an entire kind of single A preview tomorrow or later this week when it comes out. That roster is awesome. The single A roster is going to be incredibly fun to watch. As we already just saw during this scrimmage game, looks like George Walco went deep. Looks like, there's been some good other things in addition to that. So we're super pumped about all of that. That's going to be a lot of fun. But today we will focus on more of the upper level stuff. We'll briefly touch on the White Sox a little bit and then dive into Charlotte. It seems like at some point we're going to get some of these guys in Chicago, right? I mean, it's going to be
hope so.
Interesting to see when that happens,
Yeah.
But it's going to happen eventually. I think that we are prepared for it to happen, but also trying to figure out exactly when the roster shifts and the movement towards the youth is going to happen. But in general, a lot to talk about there in Charlotte, and then we'll move down to Birmingham. We don't have the official roster yet for Birmingham, but we kind of can infer who the guys in that roster are based on the ones above them and below them. And then we'll talk a little bit of Winston-Salem at the end, just the key players to watch on both the AA and high A rosters there. That's a lot. So we got a lot to talk about. But Dylan, what's going on with you? Are you ready for this season? Are you excited for baseball being back?
I'm so ready. Even though, like I said in previous episodes, it's not going to be a fantastic season for the White Sox, even though the starting pitching and to some extent the bullpen, not the best, but the starting pitching has looked outstanding. Like we were one out away from setting an MLB record, 5 consecutive scoreless appearances to start the year from the rotation, which would be phenomenal. I mean, we've talked for so long about how this system is just stacked with pitching. And, we're starting to see some of those young guys come up and actually contribute. Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin, Sean Burke, even like somebody like Shane Smith, where he just got entered into the system and is already contributing at the big league level. And we weren't expecting him to be much of anything, but if he can end up being a quality starter, that's just something that we can take it and run.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think there's a lot of positive takeaways from the first week. Of course, the team's, 2-4, whatever they are right now. Like it doesn't, the games are, it's nice to win games. Of course, we all want to win games, but at the end of the day, like the White Sox record this season, in my opinion, is not the super important part, right? It's about seeing development. It's about seeing the growth of these guys, right? And like early on this season, right? Like getting really good start of the year from Sean Burke. He's having a rough one today, but one good start, one bad start. I'm fine with that, right? Like I'll take a one good and a one bad from a young pitcher in his first full season in the bigs. Like I'm fine with that. Jonathan Cannon with a really good start. Davis Martin with a great start. Martin Perez with a really good start. Shane Smith, the numbers don't look as good for Shane Smith because he came out of the game with 2 runners on. Both ended up scoring, but in general, still a very impressive start from Shane Smith. The stuff he flashed was up there with anybody in this the roster right now, right? So some really good starts. A few good things from the offense. Brooks Baldwin has had a pretty hot start to the season. I like to see that. He's kind of playing this funky utility role. He played 1 game in right field. He played 2 at second and 1 at short, I believe. I think that sounds right. Kind of getting mixed around, moved around in places, but is having a pretty good start to the year. A lot to be seen, there, but, looks good. Generally, the lineup, Andrew Benintendi's been very good, which is, I'm all for it if there's a way to, whether it's just as a productive veteran or if they end up trade valuing him, right? Like that's perfectly fine with me either way that goes, right? There's some good takeaways from this. On the minor league side, though, we'll get into Charlotte now because there's some really good things happening in Charlotte and some players, that have really stood out early and on this season so far. Who's the guy you want to start with in terms of that Charlotte lineup among those prospects there? I think there's a pretty clear guy we could start with for sure.
I mean, you can't start with anybody else other than Kyle Teal. Like the guy just won International Player of the Week for I think it was 4 games that they had last week. I mean, and deservingly so. He batted, I think it was close to 500, if not 500 on the nose. couple homers. Like he was outstanding in his White Sox organizational debut.
Yeah.
I think he's going to really start pushing the ticket on his call up date with Coley.
Yeah. I mean, it's talent, but it's also just we already knew Kyle Teal was level of power, man. Like he was not flashing this degree of power that we've seen from him last year and even in his draft season in 2023, right? Like this is a different level of Kyle Teal in terms of the
Yeah.
impact that he's shown at the plate. He showed it in spring training. It was very clear to me and to other people that saw him in spring training that he looked like a more powerful, tapped in version of himself, and he's carrying that over, man. I mean, it's just a well-rounded hitter, but someone who's showing more impact upside at the plate than he did prior to coming to the White Sox organization this season.
Yeah, I think that coming into the year, I was sort of torn on like which one of the catchers would come up first, Teal and Caro. But like with the start that he's having, there's a chance that like he gets promoted up and he's in the mix for a PPI pick if he wins Rookie of the Year. So like you just kind of have to weigh it. So like
Edgar Guerrero's also hitting 455, by the way. So like it's not like it's one or the other, right? Like it's a both and thing right now with these guys. Like they are both hitting really, really well to start the season. Mm-hmm. They both look capable of hitting AAA pitching, which they already did last year, obviously. But these guys look capable of hitting major league pitching. I think that's the reality right now. Is like the two of these guys are going to be big league hitters this year. It's just a matter of when. So my question to you then is. So 172 games, for those that don't know, is there 172 days of service time is the amount of time needed to gain an entire year of service time. There's 187 season. So by my calculation, you would need to call up either of these players by April 12th, I believe. I think that's right, either April 11th or 12th. Yes. So that's 9 days away from when we're recording right now, that you would need to call up a player for them to be eligible for a prospect promotion incentive pick. Further explanation, I know not everybody's familiar with this stuff like me and Dylan are, and like a lot of people are, right? Like the prospect promotion incentive pick is if a player is on your active roster for a full year of service time, so by April 11th or 12th, whichever the exact day is, if a player is ranked in the top 100 on 2 of 3 major publications, both Kyle Teal and Edgar Quero are, if they are on the roster by that 15 days into the season point, and they win Rookie of the Year, or they're in top 3 in MVP voting by the end of their 3rd year, so by the end of their pre-arbitration years. If either of those criteria are met, then the team receives a prospect promotion pick, which comes in the comp rounds of either round 2 or either at the end of round 1, so after the first round of the MLB draft. That's not a random little here's a little pick, right? Like that's a really valuable pick to get another pick in the top 30 of the MLB draft. The Orioles and the Diamondbacks had one last year from Corbin Carroll and from Gunnar Henderson. The White Sox, I don't see Kyle Teal or Edgar Quero being an MVP candidate, but right now, there's really no other rookie aside from Christian Campbell who has fully shown to be, this huge Rookie of the Year contender. Is there a world where Kyle Teal or Edgar Quero could pass up a Christian Campbell and be in play for Rookie of the Year? I don't think it's likely, but do you think the possibility of that is worth giving them a shot sooner than later?
It's only 5 games into the season, so I'm not going to say for sure Christian Campbell is going to be the slam dunk runaway Rookie of the Year, but there's no way to know if we don't promote. So I would say do it and just take a shot at it. Worst case scenario, either one of them don't end up doing well, and then you send them back down, and you can
there's something there though. That's tough. That's a tough thing to toe that line, right?
Yeah. So worst case, they just absolutely just don't show it at all. They get sent back down, and then it's, I guess, do you get that service? You don't have to. Is it days on the MLB roster or days on the 40-man?
I believe it's days on the MLB roster.
Days on the MLB roster. That would make sense.
PPI, yeah.
So, I think that if there's a chance that the Rookie of the Year field is wide open and early on in the season it's too early to call, so I would say promote him. The worst thing that can happen is he gets valuable MLB experience, and then next year he's just one step better than he would have been at this point had he not been promoted. So I'm all for promoting, and I just don't think that there's 2 better catchers on the MLB roster right now than Kyle Teal or Edgar Quero.
I don't think there's one better catcher than either of these guys, to be honest, right? I think there is a very logical reason to think that these are the 2 best catchers in the organization right now.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the team is going to have that layer of boldness to go for it. I
Yeah.
think it's a risk for sure. I'm kind of with you. Like I would sort of be game for it. But I like, I don't think it happens. I think realistically, these guys come up in May, June, and then you accept the PPI is not going to happen. You save some time, service time, and everything, right? Like, and you see from there. It could go either way, though. Like, there's a case. There's a case to be
Yeah.
made. The way both these guys are hitting, that either or deserves a chance at the big league level soon to try and win that Rookie of the Year because these guys are good. Like, these guys are really
Right.
good, and they're not just good, but they're big league ready good. Another guy. Is that a same conversation with Chase Mydroth, or is it more of just like he's not going to be that good in terms of those guys' potential, but he's big league ready? Chase Mydroth just hit another homer, by the way, today. I just
Hmm.
saw this right now, a center field homer too. Like this is a guy that's not touted at all for his power, sneaky high exit velos and good struck balls in the past the first week of AAA ball. Another guy that I don't know what there is to prove for Mydroth. Like, what are you still proving for that guy who had a 437 on base percentage in AAA last
Right.
year and has come out the gate looking very strong as well this year?
I don't think that he is with the catchers. I don't think he has anything left to prove. I
Yeah,
don't think there's a reason for Jacob Amaya to be on the team over him. I hope that they just trade places, and then Mydroth takes over the everyday second baseman job. But with Mydroth, he's not eligible for a PPI pick just because he's not ranked on two of the top three lists.
right.
So with him, I don't understand why. I mean, I can understand why they're keeping him down just for that extra year of service time, but like at the
But I
same
don't think
time,
it's
like
that with a guy like Mydroth. I think it maybe has more to do with just the getting him in that flow with Colson in the middle
yeah,
infield, with the other guys there. Like I think it's more about that kind of developing together aspect. But like let him be the middle infield tandem with Brooks Baldwin and see what happens.
yeah, yeah. Like I don't think that there's a reason why Jacob Amaya should be playing over him because I just think Mydroth is simply better. Like Mydroth is the stereotypical like leadoff or two hole hitter, and somebody who gets on base in front of Andrew Benintendi or Luis Robert. Like
Right.
that's needed because then
Yeah.
you're forced to go at them, and then you set them up for success. Like even with a Robert, like I know he hasn't been great to start the year, but if you just are forced to throw him strikes, like he's going to do damage. Like there's no way around him if there's guys on base.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's no reason to keep him down. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where my opinion's at because I've gone back and forth a few times on these
Me
guys in
too.
Charlotte, and it's like part of me is like you just bring them up, you see what happens, and part of me is like this team is going to struggle early. The offense is going to be rough. Like maybe you just let them gain that confidence, you let them build, right? You don't put them in a situation where the offense as a whole is going to struggle, right? Like you're pretty well aware that the White Sox offense is going to struggle for the early parts of the
Right.
season. So is there benefit to just having them be in a productive offense that can have the build up that confidence and that ability a little bit more? I go back and forth. At the end of the day, like these guys are going to be in Chicago sooner than
Right.
later. They're going to be, given ample run, I hope, once they're called up. If they don't, that wouldn't make any sense, right? So, like, once
Yeah.
they're on the roster, they're going to be given the run they need to fully develop at the big league level. It's just a matter of when. I think it really could be. It could go a lot of different directions, but I do think that come a couple months from now, they'll be with the White Sox. We'll get to see them develop at the big league level, and then we'll go from there and kind of figure out what everything else looks like. But it's tricky to see these guys do well and want to see them at the big league level.
Yeah.
But finding that balance, right?
Yeah, I think that come July, even before the trade deadline, I think that we could be looking
Yeah,
at a completely different team than
yeah,
what we're seeing right now. Because, like, yeah, there's guys that like you would hope to flip at the deadline, but like Michael A. Taylor, I know he hit a homer earlier on, but like if he's not performing, like just cut your losses. Like you already have five
yep.
outfielders now, especially once Talkman comes back from the injury, because he's the one that you're probably going to be able to flip. Like lefty bat, good
Right. You're
defense.
hoping, yeah,
Like yeah,
exactly.
you can hopefully get something for that. But like with Taylor, Jankowski, I know Jankowski's probably not going to be here once Talkman comes back, but
Right.
like at a certain point, man, you just got to think like, okay, this guy's struggling. We're not going to get anything of value for him. Let's just see
Yeah.
what some of the young guys have.
Yeah. I think that's the right mindset, and I think that's the mindset the organization has. They might not say it directly, but I do think that there is a clear intention to there's an intention with these decisions right now, and there is a path, and they know that the path lies in the hands of these young players. It's just the timing factor and the development aspect and the certain little things that they may want somebody to work on or to figure out, right? Like I get all of that, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I think all three of those guys will be up soon. Continuing on the Charlotte train, rough start from Colson Montgomery. We do have to discuss that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's been tough for Colson. A nice home run in that first game of the second game.
It was first game.
Yeah, so a nice big home run from Colson that first game, but otherwise it's been a little tough sledding for sure for Colson. It's been a lot of strikeouts for sure, and it's been some. I haven't watched a ton of the Charlotte games in all honesty, but it's been from the videos I've seen. It's just a lot of counts. He just doesn't really look in the at bat. There's at bats where it just looks like he's just kind of not there in terms of his full ability and what we know we can see from him at times. He just hasn't been there yet in terms of what we know that he's capable of doing. Where are you at with that? What does it look like for Colson if these struggles continue into May or beyond? And I'm hoping they don't. And it's very early, right? It's been 5 games. It's not a huge deal yet. But what does it look like if Colson is still producing, a very high strikeout rate and not getting as much production as we'd want to see from him in a month from now?
I kind of don't have an answer for that because he's reached the highest level of the minors. You can't demote him because he's still a clear top 100 prospect in baseball. No matter how I wouldn't say no matter how much he strikes out, but he had over or near 30% K rate last year, and he's still a top 70 prospect depending on what list you look at. There's not much more that he has to prove other than cut the strikeouts down, and I'm not sure how that can be done other than just simply get more reps, but he's going to be he's over a full year in Charlotte already. So I'm just not sure. Maybe it's the back injury that kept him out of spring training for a bit. And, back injuries have been his thing. And you hope that doesn't derail his career like some other White Sox prospects. But at the end of the day, man, it's time. He's 23 years old. Can't get any more experience under your belt before you're starting to be all right, clock's running out.
Yeah, it's that time, right? It is that time. So we'll see with Colson. I'm going to give it some time. I want to wait, at least a couple weeks before we start making any general full assessments on him, right? I think he is going to have a decent. I think he's going to figure some things out. I'm not worried yet, but at the same time, it is not great to see this start from him, of course, and we will see what happens from there. The other guy in the offense I want to mention before we move on down the levels or talk about other stuff is, Tim Elko, man. Tim Elko just keeps hitting. He does it no matter what we say and no matter what his profile looks like. He has found a way to hit at every level. He hit in spring. He hit last year. He hit in Birmingham. He hit when he got to Charlotte. He hit in spring training, and now he's hitting in Charlotte again. The Andrew Vaughn thing is this is the conversation we've had back and forth. Andrew Vaughn hasn't shown any substantive sign of development for 4 years.
No.
He really hasn't.
No.
There has not been true growth seen in him at the big league level. And I know there's a lot of issues that went into his development. He didn't really play in the minors. He didn't get it. He got screwed in some ways, right? But at what point do the White Sox say this season, we're done with this? We don't need to see more of these at bats. Is that Tim Elko taking the spot, or is Tim Elko someone that could come up and platoon at DH or first base? But that becomes tricky when you've got Caro and Teal on the way, right? Does Tim Elko get a shot at the big league level? And if he does, where do you see it being even?
I certainly hope he gets a shot at the big league level because I like Nick Maton. Nick Maton has been doing a fine job over the first half a week, but Tim Elko can do pretty much the exact same thing, if not better than Maton. Maybe a bit increased strikeout rate and less hits, but at the end of the day, it's a first baseman. First basemen are out there to hit homers, and that is exactly what Tim Elko does. He hits the ball so hard, and Andrew Vaughn, I like you said, he hasn't developed since the day he got drafted. I think that I don't think that he, I want to say, because I don't know this, I don't think that he really has listened to Ryan Fuller because he's one of the only guys that hasn't seen a pretty significant uptick in bat speed from last year to this year. I know I texted you about this a couple days ago, but the bat speed increases across the entire team have been just absurd. Andrew Benintendi went from fourth percentile bat speed to now he's like league average, which a 40 percentile jump just doesn't happen in one offseason. And Ryan Fuller was brought in to do exactly that. So I don't want to say he's like just not listening, but like at a certain point, you got to just think, okay, something else is at play here because he's hasn't developed, he still can't hit, and like I don't know. I just with him, he's just a confusing
Yeah.
player that I just think has gotten way too long of a leash, and I would like to see anybody else take his spot because
Right.
time has run out on him.
And it's tricky because the counting numbers aren't terrible, right? When you see
He
it,
plays every
he
game and
plays
starts
every
in all of
day and
them.
he gets every day innings. You're right. And he still has some home runs, he still flashes some power, but it's the same numbers and it's numbers for his position that don't really cut it, right? So it's like
Yeah,
it just you got to figure out something. I think he's probably still going to get this whole season, to be honest with you. I could be wrong,
unfortunately.
but
But
I
like,
think unless there's a legit trade on the table for him at the deadline, I think he probably gets this season. I don't know who would trade for him, right? I think there's somebody. So
no
there's a
clue.
team who could still like the upside and take a shot on him as a flyer candidate, right? But he's not going to get a significant trade value, right? I think he probably gets most of the run, but I would like to see Elko at least get to the big leagues this year. I think he deserves the shot to show something, whether it's a couple days a week at first or it's here at first, here at DH, maybe a little bit of both, something like that. I think he'll get to the bigs at some point. I don't think it'll be till later in the season just because of the roster dynamics. But
Yeah, but like at what point do you say like, all right, how much worse can Tim Elko be than Andrew Vaughn? Because since Vaughn moved to first base full time, he has statistically been the worst first baseman in the league with
by
as many
WAR,
plate appearances. The worst in terms of FWAR, he's been the worst
no,
with as many plate appearances as he gets. I don't know how he gets them because he just isn't producing. He plays defense at first base, but then it's first base defense. So like, why does it even matter? So
yeah.
I don't know. I'm just done with Andrew Vaughn. I think that he's just a very confusing player that I don't know what more the organization still sees in him because I got nothing.
Yeah. It's interesting though because I think that maybe this is a different case because he was such a high draft pick, but like this regime under Chris Getz has not been hesitant to cut their losses, right? Like we've
Yeah.
seen this happen now with Jake Eater. That was a big trade, right? That you just said, you know what, it's not happening, and they've been able to move on from a lot of guys in the past year. But this is one of the guys that is still there, and I still think they see something, and they still see that college national player of the year, right? Like he's a talented baseball player. It just hasn't come along. And at some point, you got to allocate those at bats differently. So we'll see what happens there. Anybody else in Charlotte? I think Charlotte in general, is going to be interesting, but there's also like not a ton to see right now other than those lineup guys we discussed, right? I think you've got, Nick Nastrini, Jairo Uriarte are both two guys that are your starters there that you're still keeping an eye on, right? There's some depth guys with Justin Dunn, with some other veteran guys there, Schuster as well. There's a few guys in the bullpen that I think we'll get to see in
I
Chicago
was
this
gonna
year,
say.
at least a handful of bullpen guys.
I would
Anybody
hope
from the
so.
bullpen that you particularly want to see at the big league level in the near future?
I would love to see Addison Coffey get some
Yeah,
run.
me
He
too.
was
Me
he
too.
was phenomenal last year, and I think he still has a 0 ERA this year. I know that he
Yeah.
struck out the side last night when the White Sox bullpen blew that game against the Twins. I tweeted out how the Knights bullpen threw I think 4 1/3 scoreless, and I
Yeah.
think it was him and Steven Wilson went 6 strikeouts in a row over 2 innings against a pretty stacked Norfolk Tides lineup. It has Kobe Mayo, Samuel Basayo, and Gunnar Henderson was rehabbing. I think he still is rehabbing. So like, it's not like they're striking out some 25-year-old career AAA player. Like those are legit prospects. So
Yeah, no, I hear you.
I would love to see Coffee up. I still believe in Steven Wilson. I know that he was pretty bad last
Mhm.
year, but like he can be a decent like middle relief guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the bullpen will mix in and out. I think that there's
I
been
would
some
hope
good things
so.
at the big league level. I think there's going to be a handful of guys that from this AAA roster that get innings at some point, whether it's early season, whether it's late season, whenever it is, right? So it's good to have that depth, right? Like we've seen, it's always good to have some extra pitchers around, and I think there's a handful of guys on this Knights roster that will get a chance this year in Chicago. It's just a matter of when and how the timing shakes out there.
Yeah, I think that bullpen is volatile. I don't think that we're going to see a handful of guys, even like come June. Like, there's going to be shakeup. There's going to be some trades, some DFAs. Like, it's not going to be one set thing all year, and that's how it should be because bullpen pitchers are just so volatile. You can have 2 good
Yeah.
weeks and then you can suck for 2 months. So
Right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's head down to Birmingham because this is the one team that we don't have a roster for yet,
yeah,
but we do have a pretty clear idea of the majority of the roster. Let's talk through just kind of the guys that we are keeping an eye on and the main people that we want to see. Being in that situation this year, being in Birmingham, and guys that we think from Birmingham can probably make their way to Charlotte and then eventually to the big leagues this season. It starts with the rotation, right? Like this is
yeah,
going to be one of the most fun rotations to watch. Probably the most fun rotation to watch in minor league baseball.
I
Maybe
think so.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's a better rotation, especially with the trio at the top. So we did get confirmation last week that the trio starting the Birmingham rotation is going to be the big three, as I'm calling them.
Yeah,
Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor, the top three pitching prospects in the organization right now. What is there to say?
wow,
We talked about these guys last time. We did a show together, and like, there's not a ton to say here. Like, it's going to be a nightmare for everybody in the Southern League that
yeah,
has to face this
yeah.
trio on 3 consecutive days. Probably the way they're going to throw, most likely. Like, I would just hate to be a Southern League hitter. Honestly, that would suck.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know like if there's a better rotation in all of minor league baseball
Yeah,
because I know the Just Baseball list had all 3 of those guys ranked top 90, top
top
80.
80. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Grant
like
Taylor's
that's just
83. So yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Like I don't know if there's even another rotation with 2 top 80
yeah.
prospects in the same rotation,
You
let
might be
alone
right. Yeah,
3. Like
yeah,
it's just nuts. And I get that what they're doing is like, all right, we're not going to put our highest rated pitching prospects in the bandbox that is Charlotte, which like yeah, it's smart, but
yeah.
like calling up guys straight from Double A to the big leagues, it's going to be a jump. I doubt that we see any of them this year. We could maybe see Noah
You don't
Schultz or
think
Hagen
so?
Smith.
I totally think so,
We
honestly. I think it's
we
September.
could.
It's September. It's not early in the year.
That's
But
fair.
I don't
Yeah,
see why not, right? I mean, again, it depends on health, depends on building their innings up, of
yeah.
course. If these guys are healthy and they're doing what we think they're capable of doing, right? I'm not talking like, if they struggle a little bit, that's a different story. If Noah Schultz or Hagen Smith has an under 3 ERA and is making every start fully healthy, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't get a cup of coffee in September.
That's 100% fair. But I just think that like with Noah Schultz, he hasn't thrown a full season yet, so
Yeah,
I think that they'll sort of like temper their expectations for him, like in terms
fair.
of innings. And I just think that like if he's doing well in Double A, just leave him down there. Don't try and rush him up. Same with Hagen Smith. Like he still has yet to throw I think 5 games in
Right.
the system. And then Grant Taylor, obviously just coming off a lat injury, we've just never seen him healthy for an extended period of time. So I
Yeah.
just think that I think they would just like to slow track all 3 of them and just make sure that they're 100% healthy, like they don't lose any
Fair
confidence,
enough.
so
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
come next year, like you can see a top of the rotation headline by Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith to start the year, which would
Right.
be really fun.
Yeah, no, I'm here for that for sure. I think that's whatever the trajectory is. Like they're
Yeah,
going to be in
it doesn't
Birmingham
matter.
most of the season, and most of
Right.
the season of watching these three is stacked with each other in Birmingham is going to be a delight to watch. Not to mention the other 3 guys in this rotation are pretty fun too.
Oh
I
yeah.
think they sit in some capacity, so I'm curious to see because I think they want these guys on a 5-day rotation. But with
Mhm.
Taylor being an innings limit, maybe it's a 6 at the start, or maybe it's a piggyback situation with one of these guys. So the remaining 3 they're in the rotation mix is Tyler Schweitzer and Riley Gowans, who finished the season top that rotation. They were both
Yep.
excellent down the stretch for Birmingham. And then Wikelman Gonzalez, who was that 4th piece in the Garrett Crochet trade. Speaking of which, Garrett Crochet got paid. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Somehow less than Max Fried, by the way.
Kind of crazy. But I mean,
Yeah.
33 career starts, give it and take,
Fair.
right? But so these 3 are also really fun pitchers in their own right? Like these are not, as pedigreed of prospects, right? Gonzalez, I think, was in the 20-ish range in our FutureSox top
Mhm.
30. Schweitzer and Gowans are both outside of it. Both kind of just missed guys. I don't think either of those guys are too far out of the top
Yeah.
30. But older guys, more college experienced, a little bit less of that, elite upside, right? But Gowans and Schweitzer showed pretty well at the Double A level last year. Meanwhile, Gonzalez was already a Double A at a very young age, right? He reached Double A at a super young point in his career. So these 3 guys are going to be pretty fun to watch as well, and especially when you're coming off those, those first 3, right? Like this rotation as a whole has the ability to just completely shut teams down, honestly.
Yeah, I think that I think Scott Merkin tweeted something about the rotation. Like it was either early today or like late yesterday, but it's going to be Schultz Friday, Schultz Friday, yeah, Smith Saturday, and then Gowans Sunday, at least to start. So
Got
maybe
it.
Taylor goes Thursday. So I don't know,
Yeah.
but you can slot him out there in any sort of 6-man, 5-man. It doesn't matter. Like those guys are gonna absolutely lock it down. Um, and I think it's going to be a lot of low scoring games just because the offense is not as highly touted. They've got a couple fun bats, but it's the team to watch if you like pitching in the system.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely the team to watch for pitching. I think the offense is going to be a little bit, not quite up there with Charlotte or Kannapolis for sure.
Oh
But I
yeah.
still think this pitching staff is going to be real fun. And there's also a lot of guys in terms of relievers, right? You've got Peyton Pallette and Eric Adler, who are probably the two highest pedigree or ranked potential
I would say
relief
so.
pitcher prospects in the system. I think Pallette is definitely the top pitching reliever prospect. And then relief prospects obviously are not the same level as starters, right? You're not going to be viewed the same then as a starter when you're a relief prospect. But I think Pallette and Adler are two guys that we also think could debut late this season, definitely next season for sure.
Definitely.
I think those are guys you very much want to be in your bullpen come 2026, right? So this pitching staff, top to bottom, is going to be real fun. It's going to be a blast to watch. I'm going to be tuning into those, Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, Grant Taylor, even Riley Gowans, Tyler Schweitzer, Wikelman Gonzalez. It's going to be fun. Offensively, so what we don't know the exact roster like we mentioned, but we do know a lot of the pieces. We know that the middle infield, so there's some cool middle infield duos. It almost seems like the organization is kind of
Yeah.
moving guys in duos. I think that's something I noticed in spring training, the way they were talking
Hmm.
about guys. And I think that's part of the Mydroth and Colson thing is that, your dream scenario is those guys can be your middle infield in Chicago, right? So you're having them be together in Charlotte. Birmingham, on the other hand, you've got Jacob Gonzalez, who finished the season last year. And then his counterpart, I was very curious who was going to be the other middle infielder in Birmingham because there's a lot of guys that are younger in that middle infield crew that are very talented but aren't necessarily ready for that yet. William Bergoya is going to be joining Jacob Gonzalez in that middle infield. William Bergoya is what, 21, I
20,
believe.
20.
20 this
Yeah.
entire season. Actually, he's going to be 20
Yep.
for all of this season. And after playing last year in High A, he got pushed a little aggressively. He started the season in High A with the Phillies organization before the trade over. He was the trade piece for Tanner Banks last season. Joins the White Sox organization and was good, but didn't necessarily stand out, I wouldn't say, right? I think
Hmm.
for him, it's like really good contact skills. So it's like he comes over to the White Sox and he strikes out 8 times in 22 games with Winston. So I
Yeah.
think that's
That's
like the
ridiculous.
calling card for him is that it's really, really impressive bat to ball, right? Last season in general, 29 walks, 38 strikeouts on the entire season, 27 stolen bases as well. So this is a guy it's contact and it's speed. You're not going to get power from Bergoya. You're not really going to get, a super rangy defender. I think the organization views him as a second baseman, right? He's played some shortstop in the past, but now with being there with Gonzalez, right, they still are working Gonzalez pretty much full time at shortstop. Bergoya is probably going to be the full time second baseman. He'll get a few games at shortstop here and there. It sounded like from Paul Yanish on his call, it sounded like he would mix in occasionally at shortstop, but generally this is your second baseman next to Jacob Gonzalez. Bergoya was one of the talks of camp, man. I got to tell you, he was getting some real good reviews at spring training. And 20 years old going straight to Birmingham, it shows the organization's kind of belief in what he does at the plate.
Yeah, I mean, he looked absolutely phenomenal in spring training. I know that he hit a ball 111 miles an hour, which I did not know he had that in the
I
tank
did not either.
until he hit it. Like I think it
Yeah.
was I forget who it was off of, but it was a triple down the line, and he just absolutely flew around the bases. So I think that Bergoya could be a name to watch from this Birmingham lineup just because of how young he is, what he's shown already, and just contact and speed guys are fun to watch in the minor leagues. And if he can add just a touch of power, I think that he could be sort of a guy that we start to think of like, okay, if Colson doesn't work out, maybe this is the guy at shortstop. Like I don't want to put that on him already just
Hmm.
because he's very young.
He's
But
small too. I don't know
yeah,
if I see it at short. I see it more at second probably, but even at second base, right? The profile of very good bat to ball with a lot of speed could play well at second.
yeah. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that you could slot in Bergoya to the future of the White Sox, and I think that an aggressive assignment to Birmingham is probably he's going to handle it well, just because in the Southern League it's a very pitcher dominated league. We saw that last year with Birmingham with their crazy rotation last year, and
Yeah.
it's going to be even better this year somehow. But like Bergoya is a guy that he's similar to a Brooks Baldwin in a way, where puts the ball in play a lot, can create havoc on the base paths with his speed, and there's a lot to like. He's young still.
Yeah.
I think that he could be a name that we look on in a year or so and be like, huh, okay, this might be a future piece of the White Sox middle
Yeah.
infield.
No, I'm hoping it goes that direction. I think that's definitely possible for sure. So I'm curious to see where that goes with him. The rest of the infield is probably a mix and match. I do know Caden Connor is going to be there, which is interesting because
Hmm.
he's one of the last picks from that 2023 draft, but has moved quicker than most guys. Funny
Yeah,
enough, and then Rikui Nishida as well. So that's two of those later round 2023 guys who are going to be bouncing around. I think they're both kind of that utility profile, right? Where I think Connor will play some first, he'll play some third, he'll probably play some outfield. I think Nishida with Bergoya there, it seems like Nishida will be more of an outfielder moving forward,
I
or just
think
kind of
so.
that Swiss Army knife maybe, where he plays a little bit of everything. But I don't know because it gets a little crowded there. So I'm curious to see how the positional stuff works out. But Sean Gusenberg, another infielder there. Those are kind
Hmm.
of a handful of the guys, and then the outfield is at least for now. I do know that it will be Terrell Tatum, DJ Gladney, Wilfred Veras, and Jacob Burke are all four guys that are going to be in the mix for innings in the outfield. Those four were all there last year, right? These were all
Hmm.
guys that were there at times last year. Gladney and Burke both bounced between Winston and Birmingham. Tatum and Veras spent the entire season, I believe, in Birmingham last
Yes.
year. All those guys will be there again. It's a good group. It's a
Hmm.
decent group, but there's also not necessarily people that jump off the page in terms of what they're able to do and what we're looking at long term for them.
Yeah, I think the outfield group is underrated. I think it's a very fast and fun outfield group with Terrell Tatum and Jacob Burke. Those are probably two of the top five fastest guys in the White Sox
Yeah,
organization, and having both of them in the same outfield
and
is
Rikui, not to mention if he's
yeah,
out there.
exactly.
Yeah,
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 so like that could be an outfield that we're seeing highlight reel plays from every night. But
right.
and then you also have DJ Gladney and Wilfred Veras, who they can hit the crap out of the ball. So I don't know.
Is there
It could
Is
be
there a
sneaky fun.
breakout for either of those two? What do you think? Because Veras and
I
Gladney are
don't
similar
know.
profiles, right? There's a lot of power in the tank for both those guys. There's a lot of whiff as well. I think Veras doesn't really have a defensive home. He still is kind of figuring out the outfield slowly but surely. But I could also see
Yeah.
Veras start to get some innings at first. I wouldn't be surprised. Whereas Gladney is a little bit stronger defensively, still not a great defender. Both of them, though, a lot of power. I would love to see one of those guys take a step. I'm not completely sure if they're the development. You never know, right? Like there's some of these guys that have this raw power can take those steps sometimes and maybe somewhat out of nowhere and can become a legit piece for the organization. These two have kind of been stagnant the past year or two, but I'd hope that at their second year in Birmingham that one of those guys or both those guys could take another step forward. Hopefully,
Yeah, there's a lack of outfield depth in terms of like highly touted outfield prospects like Braden Montgomery, George Walco, maybe Samuel Zavala. Like those guys are probably the top three
right,
guys in terms of outfield prospects in the system, and all three are below them. They're in Zavala's in high A, and then Montgomery and Walco are in single A. So like
right,
if they take a step forward, they could sort of shoot to the top of like, all right, the White Sox need an outfielder. You're up. So I don't
right.
know. It would be fun if either of them took a step forward just because of how much power they have. I know Gladney can hit. He hit a ball like 118 miles an hour in the Arizona Fall League. We know how much
Yeah,
power Wilfred Veras has. He hits light tower moonshots like pretty much on a weekly basis.
yeah.
But yeah, like it could be fun. I'm not saying it's going to be great, but like it could be a pretty
Yeah.
fun team
Yeah, and I think Birmingham, the pitching will be the highlight, but I think there's some bats
for
that will
sure.
be better than you may expect them to be. The catching, it should be Michael Turner, and then I think probably Adam Hackenberg catching there because Hackenberg didn't make the
I
Charlotte
believe so.
roster.
I believe
I
so.
could be wrong; it could be another guy, but I think Michael Turner will probably be the starting catcher there after coming off of last year, and then because we know the catchers below are some of the recent
Hmm.
draft guys as well. I'm excited to watch Birmingham. I think the pitchers highlight it for sure, but I think
Oh,
there's going to be some other
definitely.
players throughout that roster that'll be better than their name value may present, and I think some guys that could take a step forward. I think there's some players who have a little bit more in the tank than what they maybe showed last year, and there's opportunity now in Birmingham for some of these guys. These recent these 22, 23, 22, and 23 particularly draft pick guys that we hope could take another step forward. But it is tough. Birmingham's that level where you really start to see the guys that separate guys as organizational guys and as legit pieces, right? Like that's where the separation happens, and that's what's happened with a lot of these guys. Very curious to see Jacob Gonzalez too. We didn't talk a ton about him with Bergoya.
Yeah.
This is kind of you got to see something from Gonzalez
Yeah.
this year. You got to see a step forward from him for sure. He looked pretty good in Arizona. I'm just watching him. I think that there's from a first round pick, like what we saw last year from him, there were some decent signs at times, but you're going to have to see some more significant production from him, to be feeling better about where he was drafted.
Yeah, he overwent like a major swing change, and last year was the first like full year that he was like
Right.
using the new swing, and it can be uncomfortable at times, especially from
Yeah.
how drastic of a change it was from his old swing. So I don't want to say that he's in for a big year or anything, but like certain things can take some time getting used to. So I'm still not out completely on Jacob Gonzalez. I do think that this is his make or break year, just because of, like you said, how highly he was drafted and just how little
Yeah.
we've seen from him over a consistent like year basis. Like he's had some hot streaks. I know that he started last year hot in Winston and then got the promotion to Birmingham and then didn't do much for the rest of the year. But
Right.
like he's shown at times that he can be a good bat. He can play shortstop. He played second base at the end of last year. So like there's a lot of ways for Gonzalez to sort of put his name back on the map in terms of the White Sox future. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not entirely out, but I just need to see something this year that can pull me back in to him.
Yeah, I'm there with you. Moving to Winston, we'll wrap on this because I do want to save some time for the other stuff. We're going to talk Canny on our next episode with Dan Haloti. Winston's roster is a little lackluster, I would say, overall compared to
Yeah.
the rest of the organization. I think that there's kind of this waiting little gap in the organization right now where there's a lot of guys in Kannapolis that are probably too good for Kannapolis,
Yeah.
but they're going to be productive together. And then sooner than later, they're going to move. So Winston's roster almost feels kind of like an incomplete grade to me because I
Mhm.
think it's going to change a lot in the first month or two of the season. It's a ton of recent draft guys. The 2023 draft class is kind of the highlight of this pitching crew, which is fun because the draft classes are, the core draft guys are kind of moving.
Oh, your mic cut out. I'll continue. If yeah. So basically, the guys that got drafted together like are going to stay together. We've seen the White Sox like move them together sort of in increments, and there's it continues in Winston. You got a lot of the pitchers that were drafted in 23, and then some of the guys that were drafted in 24. And even just like undrafted free agents like Phil Fox did get drafted in 2024. Carson Jacobs, I believe he was an undrafted free agent, right?
He was, yes. I think you hear
Yeah.
me now. Good.
Yes, I can. There we
Yeah,
go.
Carson drafted. I mean, there's a lot of guys from that draft class, right? I think it's up and down. There's guys from the 23 class, whether it was drafted guys or undrafted guys, that are all filling out that roster with Keener and all the Peppers, right, and Gordon. Phil Fox was this past year, right? So there's a couple guys from that 2024 draft group, but in general, it's a deep group of pitchers where there's a lot of unproven guys, is what I would say.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of talent, but a lot of guys who haven't shown quite yet what we think they could be capable of. That doesn't mean there's not talent. There's just a lot to be proven. In addition to, my personal favorite, Aldrin Batista, who will lead that rotation with those other
Yeah.
draft guys.
Yeah, I think that the bullpen actually could be sneaky very good because
Yeah.
like we were saying, Phil Fox and Carson Jacobs, those are two of our favorite relief prospects in the entire system.
Yeah.
And then Tanner McDougal, is he out as a starter? Do we know?
It sounds to me like he's still a starter. So
Okay.
that's going to be interesting because I don't know what does this rotation look like? Because Jake Bockenstadt was starting the FutureSox game
Yeah.
today against the Canny Ballers, but I also don't think he's in this rotation. You've got to have Aldrin Batista in the rotation, obviously. You've got Seth Keener definitely in the rotation. You've got Lucas Gordon definitely in the rotation. Those are the three that I think are guaranteed. I think Jake Peppers is also still in
Shane
that
Murphy,
rotation.
Jake Peppers.
I don't think Murphy is. I think Murphy's
Maybe? I don't
your
know.
long relief guy.
Yeah, that's
I
what I
think
was kind of
Peppers is
thinking.
more likely as your
Yeah, I
four,
would say
but
so.
then you've got Bockenstedt, you've got McDougal if they're still starting him potentially. You've got Murphy who was a starter last year. You've got Tommy Vale who was a starter last year. Right. So I don't know exactly what it looks like in terms of how you stack the pitching. You know for sure you're going to have Batista, Keener, and Gordon, which is already a really fun trio at the top of that rotation.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I think like Peppers was a pretty good starter last year. I also have always said from the start when he was drafted that Peppers could be a nasty reliever if he
Yeah.
transitioned that direction, just
Oh,
because
yeah.
of the way he throws. I think he could be a very good reliever. Same goes for Tanner McDougal. Like Tanner McDougal's the guy where he has more stuff. He has better natural stuff than probably anybody in this group, honestly, on this roster.
100%.
But McDougal has taken a little. I mean, he's taken his time to develop. He's had some struggles along the way, right? Does a relief role make more sense for him going forward to really maximize his stuff? I don't know exactly how it shakes out, but there's a lot of guys I want to see more from in this rotation and in this pitching
Mhm.
staff in general, which will at least create that intrigue there to see, who really emerges among these pitchers. Because I know Aldrin Batista, don't know, but I'm pretty confident Aldrin Batista will continue to show what he showed last year. The
Yeah.
rest of these guys, like, there's a lot to still prove and to show going forward.
Yeah, and like we said for Birmingham, like it's guys that could be up fairly soon. Like I know that okay, high is a mile away, but like Phil Fox, if you've watched this podcast in the past, if you've followed me on Twitter, you know how much I like Phil Fox. He's a super low release point guy. Doesn't throw too hard. Sits in like the low to mid 90s. But the
Yeah.
fastball was like one of the best pitches in the entire draft class last year in terms of like whiff rate, stuff plus, and like in zone whiffs. Like it's very good. And then we were talking like a couple days ago. He added a splitter, which I mentioned that he should, and it rounds out his pitch mix into fastball, slider, splitter. And he needed that splitter just because it's something to get lefties out. So I think that he could be somebody that we look up in 2026 and we're like, oh wow, he kind of had a meteoric rise to the majors.
I like your calling a shot there a little bit. I don't mind that
Yeah,
at all.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of guys. I think this pitching staff in general should have some intrigue for sure. The offense is definitely missing pieces. Like I said earlier,
There's a
there's
few pieces.
3 to 4 guys I would say in Canny who will be like the biggest bats in this lineup soon, right? So there's definitely like a lack of those like elite hitters. I know there's we'll talk about the Canny on another episode, but Braden Montgomery, Nick McLean, Casey Sauke are already the 3 immediately to jump off the table of like once those guys get acclimated in Canny, I'm not sure what they're doing there.
Yeah.
I don't even know what Sauke's doing there in the first place. You mentioned this earlier, and I like the idea that maybe it's kind of that giving protection to some of the young guys,
Mhm.
whether it be Walkout and Bonnemer and just Mogollon, and just making that lineup just like this really deep lineup in Kannapolis that allows
Mhm.
all of them to succeed more because they're not getting targeted and pitched differently. So maybe that's part of it, but like. This Winston lineup is going to be a little rough, I think. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of places where you look in this lineup and it's like, oh, where is Braden Montgomery? Where is Casey Sauke? Where are these guys that you really like in this lineup? Who are some of the guys in this lineup now already, though, that you kind of are keying in on within this Winston roster?
I mean, I would be remiss if Sam Antonacci wasn't the first name out of my mouth right here
Yeah,
because
for sure.
we both love him. We're the high men on him in the FutureSox team
Definitely.
just because he was nuts last year once he got drafted and got sent to Kannapolis. Like I think he had like a near 500 on base percentage in the time that he spent in Kannapolis. And he's just a contact hitting demon. Like he just puts the ball in play, forces the defense to make plays, and he can hit for a bit of power. He's got gap to gap power. I saw Jeff Cohen interviewed him, one of the other co-hosts of this. He interviewed him earlier today, and he said that like, yeah, I can hit homers. I just choose not to. Like I just choose to do what's best for the team. Which I know like every contact hitter says that like oh yeah, I could hit homers if I want to,
Mm-hmm.
but like Antonacci does have a bit of pop in his bat.
And I told you that, but I saw him hit an opposite field homer in a B game in Arizona on first pitch too. He was first pitch hunting a fastball and goes oppo taco over a homer over left center. So like he's got a little more impact. I think that we could start to see this year come through a little more.
Yeah, and then continuing on that list, Gerald Perez gets a bump up to Winston. That was one name that we were kind of going back and forth on. Like, well, what does he start in Kannapolis? Does he get the bump to high A? And he gets a bump to high A. And I think that it's sort of like he was, or Javier Mogollon was depending on where he started.
Right,
because
exactly.
if he started in Canny, then Mogollon was going to be in Arizona for a couple months before he got bumped up to Winston. Yep. But Raul Perez, he's one of the guys that like we could see something from him in this lineup this year, just because he's got a ton of pop. He's a smaller guy, has a ton of speed. He can do some impact. He can do some damage on the ball, and I think that he's going to be a guy in like July where we're like, all right, why doesn't he get a promotion to Birmingham? Because the Birmingham lineup sucks. So. Let's see.
Yeah, I mean he's 20 all season too. This is another guy who like he's in basically the exact same age bracket as Bergoya. So I think obviously Bergoya being a level ahead of him last year, Bergoya's kind of got that step up, but he's the next in that line of second baseman, right? It sounds like at least from Paul Yanish that Perez is going to be the primary shortstop with Antonacci being the primary second baseman. I don't know how much I see that. I think they're going to switch it off a little. I'm curious to see how Pat Leland handles that. My opinion is generally that the organization wants to have Pearl Perez be a shortstop because he was a big piece in that trade, the Eric Fetty trade last year. I think it's more of an
Yeah.
image thing than anything. I don't really think that he is a shortstop. I think he's probably a second baseman. I've thought
Yeah.
that since the second I saw him play for the first time in person. I hope it works at shortstop. Antonacci also is probably more of a second baseman, and I think both those
Yeah.
guys are probably more of a second baseman mold. So I'm curious to see how it'll play out throughout the season. Either way, that's another duo in the middle infield, which I love. I
Right.
think it's really good to have a legit duos at every level in the middle infield that we're watching and we're keying in on. So those are kind of the two bats that highlight this roster. Beyond that, a handful of, the recent 2023-24 draft guys, right? Ryan Galaney was a 24 guy or 23 guy. Alec Makarowicz was a undrafted guy last year who we knew was going to move quick because of his age and his experience. The handful of Wes Kath is a guy who's now his third season in Winston. Let's see it, Wes. I mean, I think
Yep.
this is about it for Wes Kath. A second round pick, right? High pedigree. He showed some signs last year, but still generally too much whiff, not enough, consistent at bats, right? Like this is kind of it for Wes Kath. Like he's got to show it this year in Winston. He's got to get to Birmingham this year, or else it's kind of the clock is running up on him. RT Hernandez gets the jump from Canny. Who else am I missing? And then the outfield, you go over, you've got Sammy Zavala, who was in Winston last year, who gets to repeat Winston. Still very young, probably is going to be the primary center fielder there. Matt Hogan, Drake Logan, both older, experienced guys. And then Cole McConnell was an interesting one. Cole McConnell making the Winston roster. He's a 10th rounder last year. Cole McConnell was a drafted significantly behind and for a very low slot, if I remember right. This is a guy who was, a veteran, experienced, I think he's already 24, maybe 25. 24. I think he was a fifth-year draft pick, right? So a fifth-year draft pick, drafted in the 10th round last year. Him jumping Sauke and McLean I get more because the injury, but like him jumping someone like Sauke, what did you make of Cole McConnell being on this roster? Because that's very interesting to me.
I think that it just shows the organization is like sort of high on him because at the time I like the pick. I think that he could be a sneaky outfielder to watch. I know he's older and doesn't have like that much time to get up to the big leagues, but like he was a very good player in college. He went to Louisiana Tech, I believe. I think
Louisiana Tech, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that he could be a guy that sort of like sticks his head up saying like, all right, I'm here. And then we mentioned the Birmingham outfield. Like, yeah, it's fun. It can have its moments, but like if there's a consistent hitter in that Winston lineup, especially once like Braden Montgomery, Casey Sauke get moved up, even Nick McLean later on in the year, like he could be a guy that gets bumped to Birmingham just because there's nowhere else for him to go. And I think he could hold his own. I'm not saying like I'm super high on him or anything, but he could be a guy. I'm not saying that
I'm
I'm
curious.
out on him, but
I think it was maybe more of like the trying to keep the Sauke, McLean, Montgomery core together type of thing than it was McConnell. I think that's kind of, he just maybe got the shove up because they wanted those guys together and they weren't ready to go past Canny yet. All of them at least weren't. I don't know exactly. I'm curious to see how it plays out. But at the end of the day, like Hogan, Logan, McConnell, Zavala, none of those guys are going to stop the three guys on the way from getting innings in the outfield, right? So I think Zavala maybe is the one that'll continue to get innings, but I think ultimately those guys will be there for now, and maybe they get a bump to Birmingham and they get some innings in Birmingham when that time comes. But I think sooner than later you're going to get at least a couple of one or two of that, that McLean, Sauke, Montgomery trio in Winston, and then plugged immediately into the middle of that lineup. So.
Yeah, I think Sauke and Montgomery are going to move very quickly. Like you said, I think Sauke is only down in Canny just for protection, like making that 1 through 5 of McLean, Montgomery, Walkow, Sauke, and then Bonham batting 2. Like that's a ridiculous stack top 5.
Yeah, that's an insane top 5, and we'll talk about that on the Canny episode. But it's crazy.
Yeah. So like you can make the case for like, all right, those guys are just down there to give the younger guys some protection so that they're not striking out 35% of the time, which George Walkow might anyways, but you can hope that he gets more pitches to hit just because of there's other guys that are probably better than him at this current point in time. So I don't know. I can see why they did it, but I think that Sauke and Montgomery are the first two up, and I think it's fairly quick into the year. Like I would say I would say before June, to be honest. if not
I
sooner.
would agree with you there. I think it's going to move quick. The last guy to mention on this roster, Jackson Appel should be the starting catcher
Yep.
here. I think Weston Eberle will get some innings, but Jackson Appel being a last year draft pick, super experienced. I think Jackson Appel is the perfect catcher to be working with all these pitchers that we mentioned, kind
Hmm.
of, trying to prove themselves this season. Appel, 5 years of college at high level programs, right? Like he has a ton of experience. He's been there. It looks good. I talked to him in spring training. He definitely seems like someone who's prepared to work with these pitchers and wants to help these guys learn, communicate back and forth, right? I think that he's going to be definitely a good, productive catcher to be there in Winston alongside all these young pitchers.
100%. I think that he is. I think that he could be like sort of a guy that at the end of the year we're like, oh, this is a legit catching prospect because uh, he's, like you said, got a ton of college experience. Jeff really loves him. He saw him in Kannapolis and Winston. Did he get to
Yeah.
Winston last year? Yeah.
No, he was just
So
in Canyon last year.
okay,
Yeah.
so then yeah, he saw him in Canny, really loved
Yeah.
him, loved his game, and I think that at the end of the year he could probably be the third best catcher in the system, and that's not like a slight to Appel. That's just like, all right, you got Teal and Caro, which is probably the best catching
Right.
duo that an organization has. So
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think we will see where it rolls for sure. But this roster is definitely the weaker ones of this farm system in general in Winston. But like we said, there's a lot of guys in Candy that will be on the way to Winston soon, and that will make
yeah,
that team really exciting. I think come the second half of the season. I think there's pitchers in Candy also that can push their way to Winston
definitely,
decently soon. So I mean, I think there's a good chance you'll see an Aldrin Batista, Lucas Gordon potentially move up from Winston, which would then clear way for some of those Candy pitchers to make their way to Winston. On the hitting side, nobody's going to stop all those guys we mentioned from getting to Winston pretty early in the season. So the team will get better. But yeah, that's a general look at these three teams. I'm going to have a Kannapolis preview with Dan Haloti, where we're going to really dive into that super exciting Candy lineup, which we kind of previewed a little bit here. It's just loaded, honestly. So we are going to keep rolling here. Everything kicks off. We're recording this on Wednesday, and Friday is the beginning of minor league season for the rest of the other for Double A, High A, and Single A. So really excited to see. We've got Noah Schultz baseball to watch this weekend. We've got a lot of other
yeah.
guys to watch. It's going to be a very fun time to get things rolling, to get the baseball season going, and hopefully the White Sox can keep showing some good things. There's some ups and downs. It's not going to be pretty at times, but in general, I think that we feel pretty good about stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun, and especially on the minor league side, it's gonna be a whole lot more enjoyable than the big league side because there's definitely more players to watch that are more intriguing on a night in night out basis than whatever's going on at the big league level.
Yeah, no, 100%. We will see what happens there. We'll check in as everything gets rolling. I will have the Candy preview, like I mentioned with Dan Haloti. We're going to start trying to go live. I think a plan is in the future to start getting these Monday shows going where it's the minor league off day, and we can just kind of get rolling, get some comments in, get people interacting. So that'll be super fun in the near future as well. So looking forward to it. Dylan, thanks for joining me as always, and we'll talk
Of
to you next
course.
time on the Roundup.